we'll start doing some conversions of the Strake modeling to the additional element modeling. Now we saw how we can convert them one at a time. You can convert the plates, you can convert a compound to an additional element, or you can split a Strake, you can convert Strake quads to regular quads, and so forth. But there's an easier way of converting these. One thing you can do is when you copy a Strake, like let's say we wanted a plate down the center here, similar to what we have on the side here. I could go into the model copy or model elements copy dialog, and we can add, we'll do by seed advanced again, and I'm going to grab, I have to click in this dialog, otherwise it's going to add additional nodes. You need to click up in one of the X, Y, or Z boxes, and we'll go from there to, and I rotated the model so it lost the focus from there. I believe that is the end of the, yeah, there's where the bulkhead is there. And I'm going to move this from the outer edge to the middle. And I'm just making a copy. Now it was a Strake, but it didn't copy the Strake. It took the Strake quads and made them, the copies are now just additional quads. At any rate, when you copy out of a Strake element, it becomes an additional element. And then we can go ahead and delete those. We'll use the deletions dialog and add by seed. And you can see it grabbed everything along that panel. And we'll just delete it. Now, if I want to convert some of these things, just a portion of this, to additional quads, you could double click on each one, which would take a while to get through, especially if you have a large area you want to convert. Or a couple different ways of doing it. One is to use the deletions dialog, and it'll be as if we're going to delete these quads, and we could also add beams or anything else in here. But instead of deleting them, what we'll do is we'll create a new module from them. And when it goes to create a new module, and by default, the name it's going to select is redefine and then the number of elements that was in the selection set. Although you can change this name if you like, but it's a temporary module that we're going to have here. So I'm just going to say, okay, we'll use that name. And it copied those Strake quads into a new module, which doesn't have Strakes, and converted them to additional quads. If we go back and view the full model, you can see if we turn off the redefine, the original Strake items are gone, and redefine is the new module containing those converted Strake quads. And in Maestro, it's very easy to combine modules. This module doesn't have any Strakes in it, so we can simply just drag it onto beam 0, where they came from, and it merges that into the original beam 0. So it effectively converted our quads, our Strake quads, into additional quads. And we could have done that with the whole module if we wanted. We could have selected full Strakes and grabbed all of them, said make a new module, converting them all right now, and then we drag them back into beam 0, and now we have pretty much a full module here, where we've kind of gotten rid of all of our Strakes. Now we still have the compounds, and we still have endpoints in there, so that repetitive structure from the endpoints is still available to us. And maybe we only wanted to convert the plate elements to quads. We could have left the frames as pieces of the Strake, so that we could change our frame spacing very easily by just using that deletions dialog. Now that they've been converted to additional elements, you no longer have any of those features of a Strake, any of those, the ability to modify them quickly based on the repeating segments along the endpoint in the module. Now, some other ways of doing that same conversion are to use groups. And here you can create a single, or you can grab a single module here and create a group very quickly by right-clicking and say create group. It's essentially the same command as if you were to click on the groups dialog, create a new one, and say whole module, and add the module. But the quicker way to do that is to simply right-click on the module and create group. And if you want to convert all of them, if you want to create a group for every module, you could click on the substructure above it, and it'll apply that command to all the modules below it. So if you do this at the top level, it will create a group that corresponds to each module in the model. So I'll say go ahead and create group. And in the groups dialog, you'll see under general, we have 3 groups, one for each one of the modules in the model. Now, they look the same, but in the top, in the parts tree, these are the actual model. And in the groups tree, all we have are not really a copy, but a reference to all of those pieces. Now, they happen to contain the exact same thing. If I delete them from the parts tree entry, they're gone from the model. If I delete any portions of these from the groups tree, all we're doing is removing it from the group. I can get rid of a bunch of these things and delete them, but I'm deleting them from a group. So my beam 1, most of it is gone from the beam 1 group, but the beam 1 part is still fully intact. So let me delete these groups, and I'll recreate the module groups as we did earlier. So now we create these 3 groups. We'll view them. Now, just as we created a group from the module, in the groups tree, we have a similar command to create a module from a group. So now that we have all of these strakes, or basically every element in the model contained in a corresponding group, we can come in here and we could create individual modules one by one, or just like we did in the parts tree, you can click on the folder that contains them and say create module. And for each group under there, it's going to create a module. So just take a second here, because it's essentially doing the conversion from all of those strakes into additional elements and beams. So in the parts tree, you can see we have our original 3 modules there. And if actually let me leave the view part at the top, and I'm going to take the general group and turn visibility off. So that's where all of our content currently is. If we turn on beams, you can see all the markers are still there. All of our original endpoints exist in those original 3 modules, but none of the actual structure, none of the strakes, none of the plating, none of the beams are there any longer. And you can see the unused nodes that are here. And as an example for using that, clean up unused nodes, we'll go into the model nodes, delete unused nodes. And there's 162 unused nodes that just got deleted. Now, I guess that also cleaned up the endpoints. The endpoints are no longer there. So I can get rid of these 3 modules because there's nothing in them any longer. And we can turn these back on, and if we want, move them back up to the top. And another side effect of doing this is to change the reference. I'll delete that substructure for general. Is to change the reference that each one of these modules use. Now you can see that if we turn transparency on, the organization of the model is pretty much unchanged. We still have beam 0 at this end, the insert, and the tapered portion of beam 1 at the other end. But if we go under the substructures and modules dialog to look at all of the individual parts, you can see the location of our top, which is always going to be at the global origin. I don't think we might be able to change that actually, but I guess you can't rotate it, and you probably can't change this either. But it's at 0, 0, 0. If we look at beam 0, again, it was at the global origin, so no change there. But beam 1 is also referenced to the global origin, as is the insert. Previously, there was an offset of 2.5 meters to get to the inset, and then an offset of 3 meters to get to, or no, 3.5 meters to get to beam one. Those offsets are no longer there. Everything got indexed back to the global origin when we did that conversion. And that's kind of nice because originally, and let me reload the model before we did any of these changes. I'm going to reload beam sample one and not save this. If we look at those original three location, beam one was 3.5 meters. The insert was 2.5 meters. When we went in to edit these nodes, if I made the insert my current part and I go to edit one of these additional nodes, you can see my X value is only 1/4 meter. If I do a dynamic query of that same node in physical space, it's at 2.75, and that can be a little confusing when you're editing the model. You're having those different reference points, and it's a requirement of using strakes and endpoints within modules. You no longer have that requirement when you're using just additional beams, quads, and tris, just the standard stuff. It's only if you need features of the strakes that you have to have that shifted reference point. Now, for all of your dynamic queries, you're always going to be working in global units for your locations. And I think you actually may use global units when you do the modify additional nodes. If I were to, we can check that very quickly by just opening the nodal dialog, and I grab a couple nodes here and I say I want to modify additional nodes, and I'm going to change the X value. I'll leave it the same, but yeah, it's at 2.7517, so it should be 2.75 exactly, but it got shifted slightly, I think, point when we did a split. Yeah, the one at the end point is exactly 2.75. So when you're modifying additional nodes, you're using global coordinates. If I were to go in and edit the node directly, I have to use that coordinate system for the module. So having everything indexed to the global origin is nice.